Okay, we had King call. He had some questions concerning the Google Classroom. Um, Recognize this, guys, Auto Family. Um, Google Classroom is definitely glitchy. We do content. King was setting up his automatic transmissions for off-road vehicles off the housings, setting up the background, making a picture, blah blah blah. And so we'll add a bunch of questions, and unfortunately Google Classroom is glitchy, and sometimes it won't see the questions. We'll try to save our work and it won't let us save the work, and the pictures are there but none of the questions are there. The questions are there and the pictures aren't there, and it's this constant fighting with the computer system to get this thing to work properly. You guys deal with it in the terms of sometimes you try to log in and you don't get permissions, right? Permissions is a big thing. All right, this is part 2 of the video. It ends with me talking with King from the other one, and we were talking about air tools in the automotive workplace, how they save time, especially in part removal, getting nuts and bolts off from tricky places. Those are invaluable. These tools are invaluable of getting lug nuts off in a quick and timely fashion to keep you guys getting paid, for a flat rate and keep you in your flat rate times. The double-edged sword on it, obviously, is if you use them improperly, they can bite you. And by bite, I mean harm you. It's just a euphemism I use. They're not actually, biting you. But these tools can actually bring you harm if you're not gripping them properly. If you use these tools without being mentally fortified to use them definitively and with purpose. If you're just like blam, it'll hurt you. You have to be aware of this. You have to be conscientious of what you're doing with these things. And on top of that, you can harm parts. You get a boo-boo on your finger, we put a Band-Aid, in 3 days you're fine, right? A little bit of blood, you clean it off with your mouth and you wash it underwater. You put a Band-Aid on it or you put a suture on it, you're good to go. You go back to work. However, you use one of these air tools, you can break a part. Now you got to go buy the part again. So you have to be very, very careful. Or even worse, never mind buying a part. Okay, so you can buy a bracket for $8. But if you use a air ratchet to install the bolts holding the bracket onto an engine block, and you snap off one of the bolts in the engine block, and the engine's still in the engine compartment, and you're working on, say, the bracket that holds on to the alternator and air conditioning system on a car, you've just created yourself a 2.5 hour problem. Now you got to get a drill. Now you got to tap and drill that broken stud out. And you've got to drill it, and then you've got to and if you drill wrong and you go into the original threading, you might have to go the next size bigger in the hole that you've drilled to thread it properly so that the thread engagement works. And now you got to bore out the hole because you've moved to a larger threaded diameter on your bolt. You got to drill out the bolt hole that the bracket has holding onto the bolt. You got to drill that open. Things can go sideways with time quick. Now, if you're getting paid $20 an hour, $18 an hour, and you add 2 hours of work to your flat rate, you don't get paid that. You get deducted that. So an $8 part just ate up 2 hours of your time. That's like $40. Consider that part to be $48 value now, because that's what you've donated to it. So you lose your, and if the job was only an hour-long job to begin with, you just lost money. You didn't earn anything. You've lost money. And put yourself back and given yourself frustration. It's terrifying. Be aware of what you're doing. Don't let the mistake happen in the first place. So much of what we do, so much of what hurts us in this life and in this industry is carelessness, not being aware not practicing situational awareness, understanding where everything is around you, and checking every once in a while. Look around. Don't just become focused on one little thing. Your focus is right here for a half an hour. You won't know that someone's now, pointed a sharp metal object at your head because they're working on something, and they'll go, "Hey, Romer," and you'll go, "Huh?" and catch a metal thing on your head because you weren't aware. I did it to myself. It's how I broke my tooth. I was tired. I was forgetful. I did not practice situational awareness. And as I was walking under a darkened car, I walked up and hit my face. And yes, it's a little funny, but there was a dark metal round handle to the suspension. It was a little jack stand, little jack lift, threaded jack lift. So as you spin it, it gets taller. And this thing was under the car at the right height. And as I was walking, I went, okay. And I turned around. And as I turned around walking, I hit it perfectly right here, like I was going to eat it. And I did eat it. And it was metal. Ha! And it broke my teeth. No one's fault but mine. It's not the thing's fault. The thing was just sitting there. It could have, and no, it wasn't painted bright yellow, which it should be. We have to paint it. But because I wasn't paying attention, and I should know better than to walk underneath cars and not watch where I was walking, and not being so arrogant as to think I can look and talk to someone and walk under a car. Now, if I do that in an open field, yeah, I can walk and look behind me and say something for a moment. And things aren't going to leap out of the ground unless, ghillie suits on Marines, but or Navy SEALs popping up out of the water. But that's not it. I was in a busy garage, a workplace where there are a lot of things sticking out at odd angles. All over our shop we have that. And so we have to be aware. And that's why we push the whole no horsing around. You want to horse around, go outside, throw a football, throw a frisbee, play hacky sack, run about that way. If you slide on concrete and you get a little boo-boo, you get a little road rash on your leg, hey, them's the breaks, kid. You slide on concrete, get bit. But at least within it's acceptable that if that's where you're going to play, you got to just be aware of that. It's not grass. It's not soft and cool and green. It's concrete. But in a shop, there's no excuse. I have no excuse. I literally smacked my face. It was my own fault for not paying attention. And I paid the price by breaking teeth and then having to go to the dentist and get the Novocaine and the pain and all that crap. My fault. Luckily, had insurance and had dental, and they fixed it. Well, they fixed this one, but not that one. This one was a little break, and then it just little bits fall off. So I just got to get it capped. That'll be on me. That's the double-edged sword of using tools in our shop. They can hurt you if you don't pay attention. Air hammer, we covered. Impact wrench, we covered. Oh, no, we didn't cover air hammer. Air hammer. So that's the thing that goes for like minutes on end because you're trying to it's all it is a piston. And the piston can have any one of a number of these things that you stick down in. It could be a point tip. It could have a flat blunt thing. It could have a wedge-shaped V with the insides sharp. And that's used to literally chisel its way through steel. And if you get a good one, you get a good snap-on one, you can chisel through layers of steel. Just those, they're like brap guns. like an A10 Warthog going to town on a piece of metal. You could cause some damage with one of those air hammers. Do they have their place? Absolutely. Air hammers are amazing in separating ball joints. It's perfect. Give it a couple. Remember, you don't hit the ball joint at the threaded portion. You hold you have the ball joint comes down and it's inserted into the knuckle. You brap the knuckle, and the knuckle, like holding onto a piece of angled soap, squeezes it out. It goes, pops right out. And that's using a hammer or an air hammer, pneumatic hammer. Pneumatic hammers are great for getting axles out of knuckles or steering knuckles, or freeing up the center bolt on an axle and pulling off the bearing assembly. It's a great spot to use an impact hammer. That multiple rapid, forceful hits rapidly in succession. Oh, I can get a lot of force with a sledgehammer, but it's one hit every 20 seconds. Bing! Okay. Bing! Right? And it's not very accurate. Sometimes you can miss and screw up threads, or screw up a bolt, or screw up a nut. You hit something near the nut or the bolt and break that, like brake shields. I've hit one or two brake shields in my time, right? So you have to be very aware of using an air hammer. And obviously you don't use it on yourself. That'll just break bones in a heartbeat. Like literally done it. Like holding it in the air in your hand and fooling around will shatter bones. It's not even a thing. Don't do it. Be very, very careful of it. Especially with the chisel tips. Oof. Air nozzle. That's the little blow down gun that we use. It's a metal handle with a little rubber cone tip on it. We have a little trigger on the side, and it just releases air. It's great. The downside to that is if you do it in an area with a lot of metal chips, you got to wear your PPE, man, or it's going to get in your eyes, and it'll scrape your eyes. If you do it with sand, if you do it with dirt, if you blow down dusty areas, it'll get in your eyes, and you end up scraping your corneas. Oof. Ouch. So you want to be super careful with that stuff. Air nozzles, you can have a lot of fun. You can spin bearings up, and that's fun. And there's something viscerally happy in me when you blow down an area that's got like a lot of brake dust, and you've got your mask and you got your PPE on and gloves, and you blow the area down and you make it nice and clean again. I love that. But the danger is I've just put a lot of cloud particles in the air. So you want to limit the amount that you do it. I was younger. We had a shop I worked at for a bit, wherein we actually built air brooms. Brooms that you put the air line into the handle, and the handle was hollow and went down to like a large, those squeegees that when we wash the floors, those squeegees that push the water. Well, it looked like a squeegee, but instead of the squeegee, it had a series of little holes on it, like micro holes, and two little bearinged wheels on the outside. And you had a little handle with the trigger on it. You would pull the trigger, and the air pressure would go down the handle, out to the things, and out to all of the little micro nozzles along the bottom of this tube on the bottom, because the ends were capped off, and it was forcing the air out. And it used air pressure to push particulate along. And they did this in the shop because, I don't know, something about you couldn't have like whisk brooms or brooms with artificial or not artificial little things. Even the dustpans and the little brushes that we used, the brushes weren't bristle brushes. The brushes looked like, rolling paint on. Well, they looked like those rollers, but the rollers didn't move. So you had to It was a pain in the ass. I forget the reason why we did it, but the whole shop was run that way, where it was we used air to blow everything down. And every Friday afternoon before the end of work, right around 2:30 on a Friday, before they would fire up the grills outside for our cookout, because it was a good shop. Where was I, in Bath, Maine at the time or something? Yeah, Bath, Maine Works or something like that. It was a welding shop. And this is where I got the idea of Fun Fridays. Yeah, Fun Fridays. Was that we worked through lunch. There was no lunch. We got in at 7 a.m., welded and worked until about 11. We had break. Or no, first break was 10. 7, 8, 9, 10. 3 hours in. 10 was first break. Took a half hour. Came back at 11. 12, 1, 2. So 2 3-hour sets. And then after that, we went to clean. And after an hour's worth of cleaning, we had basically a cookout. And a cookout in Maine meant that I genuinely was at a job where we drank beer. And that's what we did. We had hot dogs, hamburgers, and steaks, and chicken, and sausages, and French fries, and guys' wives would show up. And we would have the ability to eat. A really, really fun, picnicky kind of scenario. And at the end of it, we'd pop cold ones, and it was during our work day. But it was we worked real hard for that company. I remember several times getting called on a Saturday morning saying, we need these things finished and we're behind. You mind coming in for 4 hours and, come in for 4, get paid for 8. And I was like, I'm already hanging up because I'm pulling up to the gate, homie. That's how much I want this money. I'm already here. Let me in. Let me, it was a good company to work for. But I had to come back to Connecticut. I was renting. So it was, Nancy and I were living, I think, in Enfield briefly for a little bit, in Connecticut while I was doing the welding thing. And I had to rent an apartment in Bath, Maine. So, for me, it was great because I'd have that Fun Friday and have 1 or 2, and they're just the 1 or 2. Some guys were like, they wouldn't leave work till 8 o'clock at night. How you doing? And then I'd get in the car and come home. Spend the weekend at home, go back up. I think I did that for like 4 or 5 months or some shit like that. But it was a welding gig. We needed the money. It was fun working up there. But yeah, that's where the genesis of Fun Fridays here at the shop came from me. Or, well, King 2 probably had a place or two. Or on Fridays, and the first 6 hours, like we worked 6 hours from 7 to 10, and then from 11 to 2, man, we were hustling, getting stuff done. So when that finally, when 2 o'clock rolled around, we were like, wow, clean up, air down the whole shop, and airing down the whole shop. It wasn't just, that was the other nice thing, was we wore proper PPE for it. We had the big regulator mask with the twin canisters, and we had the masks. 2 of the guys had air leads. This was ingenious of them. They ran a small T. A T is nothing more than a way of cutting an air hose, taking one side to another, connecting it with a little tube that has a little port sticking up out the top. And what they did was they had the guys over in the milling department, these big milling machines and lathes and stuff, made these special fittings where you could tee up your airline, and then on the side you had a little regulator ball valve, and you can crack the ball valve, and it made air come up into a special thing that they plugged in the side. So it had cold because it was cold, dry, fresh air that ran through the compressor, because they had big dryers. It was big. It was one of those places that had the big compressor. And they would get fresh air as they were blowing it down, blowing positive pressure into the mask and up out of the mask under their eyes. So dust, they had the PPE goggles on, they had the PPE mask on, and they were getting piped in fresh air, positive ventilation. I was like, oh, that's so cool. If I had stayed there longer, I would have done it too. But I wasn't there long. I wasn't there, one of the guys, so I just got a little mask. And yeah, we blew down the shop every Friday. And it was good too, man. It was some of the place it got, when you were in a welding shop, there's soot everywhere. Just, it was what I love to do. Anyways, all right. So an air nozzle. Yeah, you can hurt yourself. There are some places where the nozzle, just to let you guys know how much power air has. So have you guys ever heard of a water jet cutting system? Water jet cutting system uses pressurized air and pressurized water with a particulate in it. By that, it could be silicate, sand, little granules of it in the water. And the water jet is pressurized enough with air that it pushes so hard that it will cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. Water jet cutting systems are amazing. You can Google it, watch the videos. They're awesome. And also show you the definitive destructive power of compressed air with another medium. As a matter of fact, we have one in the shop. It's the sandblast cabinet. Compressed air with a little bit of sand takes metal right off. If you use a sandblaster on your finger, you will cut your skin. It's the design. It's like, hey, will this cutting wheel work on my finger? Yes, it will. And sandblasting will also abrade and cut your skin if you're not careful. Air ratchet, air nozzle, impact wrench, hammer, air drill. I think we covered them all. And we covered the pros and cons, the double-edged sword of it all. Don't use them for fun. Don't horse around with them. Also, here's another, it's a pet peeve of mine. Do not idly use an impact or a ratchet or any other piece of pneumatic equipment and rev it, in the air. Wow! Wow! Are you going to break it? Not really. But what it does do is it spins up the gears inside. And I know that we don't oil them regularly enough. And it's my fault, and I should be more on you guys about oiling it properly. A properly oiled pneumatic tool will easily and happily accept being spun at maximum RPM under no load for as long as, 30 seconds without the oil being blasted off, and now you start rubbing metal on metal. So what we do is we limit the amount of time that you guys use these pneumatic tools spinning at max RPM, so that we don't worry about oil loss and parts inside not being lubricated. Because I think all of you are starting to get the idea that two pieces of metal rubbing together that aren't lubricated quickly overheat and break down. You guys are getting that. So that being said, when we get back to the shop, don't just blah, blah, blah. I know it's fun. I know it's like revving up a car or revving up a motorcycle. Vroom, vroom, vroom. I get it. I get it. So we're just going to try to limit us doing that. Okay, that's it for the terms of the day, videos 1 and 2. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Alrighty, everybody, high five.